Hey everyone, welcome to today's stream here in the Finalmouse gaming room. Today we're going to be taking our first hands-on look at the Centerpiece Pro. I know you guys have seen all the marketing videos, all the launch videos, all the cool skins, but today for the first time, we're going to be taking a raw, kind of uncut, unfiltered look at the keyboard, the same way you guys are going to be seeing it at home. We're going to be going through how to get started with it when you first unbox it, all the features, all the nuances. We're even going to do a teardown video, a teardown portion, sorry. And yeah, let's get started with this thing. So here we got the Centerpiece Pro, looking real nice. We got a cool little paint swirl skin on it. We got all the legends visible. But before we dive deep into the Centerpiece Pro and anything like that, let's just first start at the top with what you do when you first get the keyboard and you unbox it and you gotta plug it in. So just like any other keyboard, doesn't need any other external power source. It plugs in with just one USB cable, and you have your standard USB-C to USB-C cable. So this is your standard keyboard cable that you're going to be getting with the Centerpiece Pro. For the majority of people, this standard cable is going to work. Any modern motherboard is going to have a USB-C port that's going to supply plenty of power to power the Centerpiece Pro. But if you happen to be somebody that has an older motherboard, or maybe your motherboard's USB-C port is one of these ports that doesn't provide enough power, it's pretty rare. A little more common with the older motherboards, but if you're in that group and the USB-C port isn't going to be giving you enough power, then we just went into sleep mode. Just turn it right back on, you're out of sleep mode. So what was it saying? You got another cable. And this is your USB-C to USB-A dual splitter. And this is for if you didn't have enough power on your USB-C, or you didn't have a USB-C port, or maybe you don't have enough USB-C ports and you just feel like using this. Easy to use, just you got to plug in both the USB-A ends, and that's because you need one for the data and you need an additional one for power, since USB-A is not going to be providing you with enough power just with one port. So yeah, you get both these cables in the box. If the USB-C port doesn't work for you, you'll know right away. It's not going to power on, or it's going to power cycle, it's going to have issues. And then just go to the alternate cable. Nothing too hard about that. And then once you're plugged in, you're up and running. You're going to see a little logo here, and it's going to go through a 10 to 20 second boot cycle. And then it's going to boot up, and it's going to be ready to use just like any other USB HID keyboard. You don't need any drivers, you don't need any special software. You're typing on it right away, and you're going to have a default skin that comes with the Centerpiece Pro as well. But once you want to start kind of messing with the features, all the functionality, then it's once again also very simple. We're using Xpanel, which is our web-based, kind of very lightweight, bloat-free WebDriver. If you're familiar with our mice, then you know all about Xpanel. The only difference here with the Centerpiece Pro is you're going to be hitting connect on the keyboard button. So let's go ahead and do that. And just like that, super easy, super simple. You're here in Xpanel. You have everything all in one. All your standard Hall effect analog settings like actuation point, rapid trigger, advanced keys like SOCD. But additionally, you have all the cool, unique Centerpiece Pro-related features like your skins, your plugins, which is kind of like your Stream Deck stuff, your visual overlays, visual layer remapping, visual legends. All of that is also kind of all in one in the Xpanel web app. So nothing else you got to download to use it. Super easy, all in one spot. And one quick thing to keep note of, just a little disclaimer before we go any further, this is a beta version of Xpanel, so we're not going to be able to go through all of the navigation menus. Our team's still working on it every day, every hour, so some of these are not up and running in this beta release. And also, in addition to that, another disclaimer on the hardware, this is actually fully finished production level Centerpiece Pro all final injection molded parts, but it's actually a DVT unit versus an MP unit. And DVT just means it's one of the units kind of before it goes to MP. And the only differences there is that the cosmetics and the tolerances and some of the things aren't quite as polished. So in the MP units, you guys are going to be getting even better cosmetics and gaps and seams and stuff like that. So yeah, starting at the top here, when we go through the features, you see all your basic Hall effect and analog functionality settings. You have your actuation point, rapid trigger, advanced keys, that's stuff like your SOCD. So all your basic Hall effect analog features are there. We're not going to spend time really talking about how a Hall effect or analog keyboards work, since most people are familiar with that already. But what we are going to talk about is how Centerpiece Pro works, since obviously we're looking at a drastically very different revolutionary looking keyboard. So to understand how this keyboard works, first we got to look at this part over here. And this is kind of like the heart and soul of the Centerpiece Pro. And this is the display stack module that's inside every Centerpiece Pro. So what you're looking at is a sensor board PCBA laminated through very proprietary magic sauce kind of optical alignment processes to be perfectly aligned with the key grid stems, key grid sleeves. And in between that, we have the display, all sandwiched together in a permanently bonded module that's incredibly stiff. You're not going to be getting any sort of displacement with your Hall effect sensors, and quite a bit of engineering to be able to kind of make this thing read the flux, the magnetic fields coming from the Keyswitch. Like you have, incredibly thin sensor board at 0.3 millimeters to be able to reduce the stack up height. All this bonding and lamination is incredibly precise. So you're looking at basically 80% of the keyboard's tech right here in this single module, especially when it pertains to the cost as well. So if you're doing any kind of case mods or taking apart your keyboard, just make sure nothing happens to this. You're not going to be able to delaminate this sensor board. You're not going to be able to take off the sensor board. You're not going to be able to take off the display and separate anything in this module. So just something important to keep in mind for any modders out there that are taking apart their keyboard. So yeah, let's put this back briefly. Come back here at the keyboard. And then look at the other aspect of what makes the Centerpiece Pro work and do the magical stuff that it does. And the other aspect of that is the key switch. So unlike a traditional keyboard where you have a keycap that goes into a switch that's then, on a plate on the keyboard, the keycap and the switch are integrated into what we call the key switch. So let's go ahead and take off one of these key switches. It's very simple. You can either do it with your fingers, especially on some of these outside keys, or we offer a little tool, something like this, that comes with every Centerpiece Pro. It's much easier than removing switches or keycaps on a traditional keyboard. You just kind of go in here to the side of a keycap, you push it on the flange, and the key switch is removed. And now you're looking at a key switch of the Centerpiece Pro. You see these little flanges on the side of the key switch. This is what kind of squeezes in and retains the key switch inside the key grid. You have the magnet in the middle of the center post stem. And that is what's going into the key sleeve, which, like we said before, was optically aligned with the sensor board on the back of the display module. Around the key grid sleeve, we have the springs. These springs you can customize, you can tune, put your own springs in. They just have to be the right diameter, but other than that, you can put completely custom springs in. It's as easy as taking this out, swapping in a different spring. Our keyboard just went into sleep mode, so simple as turning on, hitting a key, and you're back out of sleep mode. And just a quick reminder, you can change your sleep mode settings in Xpanel. But back to the springs. Yeah, very easy if you want to have an actuation force an ending actuation force of 50 grams versus 55 Newton grams. Very simple to go, just spec your own springs, get some custom springs. We're going to be offering custom springs a bit after launch, but it's as easy as that to kind of replace them. People often ask also, how do you clean a Centerpiece Pro? Isn't it going to get very dirty? Aren't you going to get crumbs in underneath the keys? People often know of traditional keyboards where over time you look under those keycaps and it's just a mess of just dust and dirt and food and particles and whatever else. Crazy enough, with Centerpiece Pro, it's actually much easier to clean, and it's going to be kept clean way more often, because if you get anything in there, let's say a little piece of whatever underneath one of these keys, as simple as removing that key switch, blowing some air in there, air dust, you can take Q-tip, wipe around there with some alcohol, clean whatever you need to, and that's it. And you're going to be keeping it clean incredibly easily because of the way this key switch is removed. Additionally with that, if you want to lube up your key stem or clean off some lube, it's the same thing. Little Q-tip in there into the sleeve. You can wipe off any old excess lube that you had, and you can re-lube it. And you can re-lube it in plenty of ways. We'll go through re-lubing and doing some of that stuff here in a little bit. And one thing to note too, that this is a default profile of the key switch. So just like any other keyboard where you could have different keycap profiles like a DSA or a cherry profile, same thing here with the key switch. This one is the default key switch profile for Centerpiece Pro. Maximizes kind of like, like a flat kind of visual real estate into the display. A little bit of curvature here in this default profile. Close keycap profile edges. But if you're like an avid typist and let's say you want to have like 100% typing accuracy, you're somebody that really needs a different profile, you'll be able to do that as well. It's as simple as swapping out a key switch and putting in a cherry profiled key switch, for instance. And the first key switch that we're going to be providing as an accessory after shipping is going to be the cherry profile key switch. So that's going to be available shortly after we start shipping the Founders Edition. But yeah, just like there's going to be a cherry profile, you could have a DSA profile, you could have OEM profile. The key switch can have any profile. You're just going to have the same flange system that it kind of connects with. Same magnet stem that's kind of integrated, and then it's going to work still with the same foundational technology in the display module. And that's one thing that's just really important to kind of remember, is that Centerpiece Pro, especially this first version, it's developing this new foundational kind of technology and ecosystem that's going to be able to be built on top of over time. So whether that means new profiles or new versions of the key switch, this first version of the key switch we're calling Genesis. This can also evolve over time. So the same way that 15 years ago an MX switch doesn't feel like an MX switch of today, the same is going to apply to this. The foundational technology is going to stay here the same, and then over time it's going to evolve and build on top of all this stuff that you're seeing here. So yeah, that's basically how Centerpiece Pro functions. Once you understand the key switch, the module, the sensor board underneath, the only other thing is the daughter board that has the GPU and the CPU in there, and we'll get to that when we do the disassembly. All right, let's put this key switch back on and start using this thing. Let's start with a little typing. Yeah, it's a little typing to get you guys excited here. But let's get back into all the functionality and all the things that come with the Centerpiece Pro. So obviously we quickly touched on, you have all your Hall effect, all your analog features, all of that. But what about all this other stuff, all the things that this crazy cool kind of foundational technology and the display kind of open up in the world of keyboards? So there's a lot to go over, so let's kind of break it down step by step. The first thing here is you're going to have your legends. And so you see here that I have my legends displayed. And you're going to be able to either hide your legends, you can change your legend fonts, you can even change your legend language. So you can go to, if you want to show Japanese symbols, you can do that. If you want to change to from like a QWERTY to a French language layout, you can do that. So legends really allow you not just to change kind of the design and the aesthetic of what's being shown with the legends, but also the layout and the language layout of what's being shown as well. So here we have just standard English QWERTY legend layout. Nothing crazy with the design. And now let's say we want to start doing some layer remapping. Now, layer remapping, as everybody knows with most keyboards, is what happens when you hit your function key and then another key. So if you want to make stuff on your function layer 1, you could have, for example, function, and just on a very basic level, function and 1 on this layout is F1, right? So F1 is on your function layer. Now, with regular keyboards, function layers are kind of cripple you in a way because nobody's able to go through and memorize all these different function layers and all the different functions and what they do. So the first real magical thing from a functional standpoint of what Centerpiece Pro allows is that you can finally see your function layers visually. So layer remapping is all dynamic and all visual. So let's go through how that works. When I hit my function key, you're going to see dynamically I'm now going to see my second function layer. And on my second function layer, I have my skin slots. So this is skin slot 1, skin slot 2, skin slot 3, skin slot 4, and skin slot 5. And you see all my function row keys. I let go of function, and I'm back to my base layer. Same thing if you have a function layer 2 or a function layer 3. You can go, if you were to hit function layer 2 key, you would see another layer of keys and another layer of keys. So gone are the days where you have to sit and memorize and really think about what all your different function keys and shortcuts are, because now all of your shortcuts and your function layers are all dynamic and visual. So let's say that if you look at my situation here, I have my skin slots that I've assigned inside to Xpanel on Q, W, E, R, and T. That's how I like to have it set up. I like to have my skin slots over here. So let's go ahead and switch a skin slot. And there you go. I'm to my skin 1 slot. And these skin slots, they can have images, they can have videos, or they can have interactive skins. And that's all done through right here in Xpanel on the skin section. And layer remapping is where you would decide where all these function layer shortcuts are put. So you can put anything anywhere you want. But other than that, functionally, layer remapping works just like how any other keyboard layer remapping works, only now it has that whole visual element. So let's go ahead and switch again. Let's go to skin slot 2. We got some cool lava bubbles. Let's go to skin slot 3. And we got a cool little water ripple situation going on. So that's visual layers at a quick glance. Let's go to the next thing. Now let's go to visual overlays. So what are visual overlays? Visual overlays are effectively any custom set of visual overlays you want to put on your Centerpiece Pro. So let's say that you use Photoshop a lot and you like to know visually what your Photoshop hotkeys are. Unlike visual layers, which are predefined functional things like, all your alphabet and your skin slot 1 and your profile, visual layers are all this stuff outside of that. So if we go back to our function layer, you see these were the skin slot icons. These are part of the layer remapping by default, but you don't put these here yourself. If you want to customize what's on your keyboard in terms of overlays, that's when you want to start using visual overlays. And to do that, you would simply upload your own custom PNG, and we offer that PNG template. And that PNG then just becomes your overlay slot 1, for instance. And you can have up to 4 or 5, I forget exactly which one it is, but I think it's either 4 or 5 overlay slot options. So you can have a Photoshop overlay slot that has all your Photoshop hotkeys. You could have a overlay slot that's just for a game. Let's say you're playing an MMO game and you want to be able to have at a glance, you want to be able to see what your key bindings are for your character. Let's say you're playing World of Warcraft and you have a warrior class and you've got all these key bindings. You've never played warrior before. You want to remember what all your key binds are for your warrior. You can put those on any one of your layers. You could have it as a base layer. You could have it here as a function layer. So visual overlays are simply ways that you can customize and bring in outside icons and graphics and put them on your keyboard and not be bound to the default visual icons of layer remapping. So those are just 2 ways that you can do visual overlays if you're like a Photoshop or media person, or if you're somebody playing an MMO and you want to remember all your class abilities. Now let's move on to the next thing, which is plugins. Now you don't see any plugins here right now. So let's go ahead and activate those. Now we have our plugins here in what we're calling the home grid. So the home grid is this area here that's kind of shaped like an H. And plugins are basically web apps that connect, through APIs, just like any Stream Deck would work. And you can just kind of cycle through them with the arrow keys. So here we got a Discord plugin, OBS plugin, Spotify plugin, Twitch plugin, webcam plugin. So with these, you're effectively bringing Stream Deck functionality into your keyboard. You go into this plugin by simply hitting the left arrow on the selective slot, and then you're one kind of layer deeper inside the onion of that plugin. So here's a hypothetical way. You could have, for example, if you have a Ring camera at home, you could have a Ring plugin. If somebody rings your doorbell, you could have your Ring plugin notify you right here on your keyboard. And anybody that uses a Stream Deck is kind of familiar with how plugins work, and it's effectively the same thing here. The only difference is you're not touching it with your finger, you're actually just carouseling through it like this and going in and out. So that's plugins. And together with skins, which can be interactive or images or videos, and that's here in the skin section, that makes up the bulk of all the display functionality in the Centerpiece Pro. All right, so that's all your display functionality at a quick glance. Obviously, there's other cool little things we didn't touch on. One of those, for instance, just like is mask mode here. This just brings up a black mask of squares to make legends a little more legible. And let's cycle through some skins now with that on. Let's go to skin slot 3. Oh, we were already on skin slot 3. Let's go to skin slot 4. All right, we got some cool lightning going on. Let's turn off mask mode. All right, we just turned off mask mode. Let's go to skin slot 5. Cool, we're back at our paint swirls. Let's go to skin slot 1. Nice, we're back at our koi fish. Let's hit our function layer, see our skin slots. Let's bring back up our plugins. We got our plugins back up. Now let's cycle through our plugins. Maybe somebody messaged me on Discord. I'll see a little notification. Or I want to mute my Discord mic. I can go into Discord, mute my mic. Maybe I want to go to the next song in Spotify. Come down into Spotify. You would then just function left arrow and then use the internal icons that would pop up specifically for Spotify. Now, the reason I'm not doing this, obviously, as many of you know, is we're not fully finished yet with the plugin. So I'm kind of just walking you guys through how it would work. You can go to your OBS, launch your stream, and do whatever else you'd like to do. But let's go ahead and turn off our plugins. Let's go back to Skin Slot 3, just because I like this little water ripple. All right, well, that's enough messing around with the centerpiece here. Let's go into a game. All right. And we have all the cool, crazy functionality that centerpiece gives you. But remember, it's also a fully capable Hall effect analog gaming keyboard. And you can have super fast strafes with your actuation point set really low. You can have your rapid trigger on. You can have SOCD. Obviously, Counter-Strike has banned SOCD since that became a thing. But obviously, your rapid trigger, actuation point. And if you know anything about our mouse performance, you know we don't mess around when it comes to latency. So you're getting 8K hertz, true 8K hertz polling on the keyboard. Our current XSLAT, which is our latency tool we've made open source, is currently measuring the keyboard at, I believe, less than 500 microseconds, which is pretty much at the tippity top when it comes to latency numbers. So yeah, easy to forget that it's a gaming keyboard with full analog and Hall effect functionality and cutting edge latency when you're looking at all the layer remapping and visual overlays and plugins and cool stuff you can do there. You guys like my knife? Ooh. My movement has become really bad. Oh God, let's not even bring up my movement. All right, that's enough Counter-Strike. Let's go back over here and get into Xpanel. So yeah, that's for the most part all of it. You can change your display brightness here in the display. You can update your firmware. All pretty relatively straightforward. Let's get into the teardown now. Let's go over here. Let's shift over here. Let's turn on our little workbench. Now over here we got a Centerpiece Pro. This was the display module that we were looking at before. But let's go ahead and tear down the Centerpiece Pro and see what's inside. For any modders and any enthusiasts that are interested, I'm sure this is going to be exciting. So let's get the right bit here. We're going to be starting with the Torx screw. And the first thing you want to do when you disassemble your Centerpiece Pro is just turn it around. Ideally not on your keycaps like the way I have, but this is a sample we don't care about. And go ahead and start unscrewing all your Torx screws on the bottom plate. Now our editor is probably going to do a quick little cut here so you don't have to watch me do all this. All right, we have all our Torx screws off on the bottom plate. Let's go ahead and remove it. Now, when you remove the bottom plate, one thing you're going to want to keep in mind is that the bottom plate acts as a heat sink for the keyboard's internals. So when you open it, you're going to see that you have this thermal pad here on the SOM. So this chip is where your GPU and your CPU is. It's touching right here against the plate. Sometimes that pad can stick over here You just want to make sure then it goes right back whenever you put that bottom plate in. As long as that thermal pad and this plate are touching, this plate is effectively acting as an active heat sink. So let's put this over here. All right, so let's take a look at what we got going on. This is the brain of the display and everything. This is the carrier board, the daughter board that houses the SOM. So here we have our GPU, our CPU, and if we want to start getting below this layer, we're going to have to start unscrewing these screws here. This one, this one, this one, and this one. But before you start unscrewing, you want to make sure you disconnect a couple cables. So this is your display cable. Display cables are notoriously always pretty fragile, so you don't want to kink it. You can see the routing is very particular here. You don't want to start bending this thing. But to get this off, just quickly snap out. There we go. All right, now we have the display cable off. Next cable you want to remove is this one. This one's a quick little pull tab release here. There you go. And this is the cable that is connecting your sensor board and communicating with the operating system of the keyboard. All right, let's take our Phillips head now and start taking apart this daughter board. Internally, we actually call this a carrier board since it houses the SOM. Should be good now to remove the carrier board. There it is. So that's your GPU here, your CPU. This is the thing that's also got your MCU for the keyboard as well. So anything that's basically not the sensor board that has all your multiplexers and ADCs and Hall sensors you got on this thing. Let's put this back over here. Now when you've got that exposed, the last thing you need to get to are these 4 Phillips screws up here on the top side of the case. All right, we've removed those screws. Now we can remove the internal plastic frame. And now we're here back looking at our display stack module that we had before. And to remove this, very simple, you just lift and push from the grid below. And you see there's a gasket all along the outside. Now the gasket's not going to come out from the bottom, so you just need to remove it from the top. It's very important to apply even pressure when removing this because you don't want to bend or do anything to the display stack. And there it is. Now we have the display stack just like we had over here. Only difference is we have the gasket around it and some of the cables still attached. And there it is. We have our top housing removed. It's as simple as that to remove the case. If you want to do a case mod or anything, swap this out for your own CNC'd top case, whatever else. This is kind of what you got to go through. Just remember to be careful with the things that we went over, and we'll put more instructions on mods and disassemblies and things as we get closer to shipping. Now, let's turn this back off over here and get over to our Centerpiece Pro that we had. It's in sleep mode. Let's get it back up here. Now, one thing that we forgot to do was go over lubing the stem. So let's do that quickly. Remove your key switch. Go ahead, remove your spring. Now, I have some low viscosity Krytox oil here. With the Keyswitch V1, the Genesis Keyswitch, it does well with low viscosity lubes. So stuff that's very thin. So let's go ahead and apply it here on our Keyswitch. Now, you do not have to lube your key switches. They come factory lubed, but if you want to re-lube it, remove the lube, lube it again yourself, you can do any of that you want. All right. Beautiful. And that's it. All right, we've lubed the key switch. We've taken the springs in and out. We've gone through the disassembly and the teardown. We've gone through Xpanel and all the different features and settings. We've played with the function layers and some of the shortcuts and plugins and things like this. We've even gone into game and did a little typing. So all in all, that'll be everything for today's kind of first glance and first look at the Centerpiece Pro. We're going to be doing a lot more of this stuff with it here shortly in the coming weeks. So I hope you guys enjoyed this first one, and now let's wrap things up with a production update for the first Founders Edition pre-orders batch. Hope you guys enjoyed. See everybody.